Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Your Data HQ. In our installment of AI and data startups, we have Niko Korvenlaita from Reconfigured here with us today. Niko is a data specialist with a passion for making complex data accessible to a wider audience. He is working to bridge the gap between data experts and those who can benefit from it. Even though he likes SQL, he thinks people shouldn't be writing it by hand. So thank you, Niko, for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So how did you get into the data space?
It was kind of like an accident. I ended up joining a startup in a really high growth phase, and just to do like a lot of shoveling and then I realized that if I want to be actually valuable for the company in the longer term, when things get more stable, I cannot be just like a small cog among others. I need to provide more value, and having an analytical mind, strong background in math, and I got a bit of Excel skills, so that got me like my first data analyst position. And from there on, and because it was a fast moving startup, I just had to learn on the spot, and then I learned SQL, using APIs with Python, doing data visualization with R, and just like in a just-in-time manner, I just learned things. So it
Awesome.
was an opportunity that presented itself.
Great. So what do you think is the state of today's data tech stack?
In general, I think in 2020 something, we are in a really good position. We have so many great tools that make life in data so much easier. A lot of data professionals I feel that can now focus on the actual problem and not needing to focus on the low levels of machines, how they work, and optimizing that, like a lot of us needed to do last decade. And the cloud shift, things shifting to cloud, a lot of tools being offered as SaaS has offered us a great set of APIs for us data professionals, because every single data point is an extractable via API. Most of the data manipulation with most of the tools can be done with SQL, and you can then easily drop to Python or something else when you need to. But moving data from one place to another is just like a couple of clicks or a couple of configs away. And I think in general, the current set of tooling has democratized a lot the data work and data work. There's still a lot to do, and the industry is moving and fast. And as always, we are trying things that later on we realize that aren't such a good ideas. And sadly, there are also snake oil salespersons out there and selling the silver bullets for problems, even though, well, there aren't any silver bullets. But in general, and I think the state is really good, and the tooling is great.
Cool. So you mentioned something about democratization, and I think that's also the need of the hour because even with the recent chat GPT sort of hype, it reached almost everybody and they just don't know where to get started. So would you say that this democratization need is what motivated you to start Reconfigured?
That is part of it, and the idea and what we are in the core solving, that idea came from my co-founder, who's actually my best friend. And he got so annoyed to writing SQL, having to learn to write SQL. He's a marketeer originally, and he was building the commercial data pipelines to make sure that marketing, sales, customer success has all the data that they need at the right time. But he didn't have a tool that he would have wanted to use, so that's why we and started. He was starting to bounce out the idea that perhaps a lot of the stuff could be automated or and made easier that he had to do. And myself, I'm a strong believer of automation and building technology that augments humans, bring them capabilities and superpowers that people didn't have before. And then and having spent most of my career in data space, or all my career in data space, um, seeing firsthand the gap between like the business people and the data people, and this is a huge gap, and there is a communication issues, and there just aren't enough people helping this uh, knowledge transfer or translating the business requirements for data, and there is a lot of friction, I feel, and bridging that gap and like bringing the awesome capabilities what you can do with data. Is it like a machine learning? Is it just like an um, right data at the right time to do some actions on for customer success people to get notified about certain things like, and this is such a huge opportunity, and being able to solve it with technology is something that motivates me deeply, like, and bringing new capabilities for people and building technology that might feel even like a magical, and you don't have to be like a technical expert to be able to utilize the really high advanced technology, such as like a ChatGPT is a great example of that kind of tool.
Got it, got it. So let's say in the future we do democratize the data abilities, and also if there's data automatically ML follows. So what do you envision for such a utopian data and ML ecosystem?
I'm a strong believer of like an AI augmentation over AI automation. Like, for example, we've seen like the past 10 years, we've talked about autonomous driving, but it hasn't really reached. But we have been able to augment humans in a lot of things, such as in parking or in highway driving or these kind of things that are like an. So I don't believe that we will ever reach to like 100% or like within our lifetime to in many places like 100% automation, but having these kind of like an assistance, AI assistance embedded like an everywhere. That's what I believe in, such as like a chatbot or GitHub Copilot, like in helping you. It's integrated into your IDE to help you code better, faster. A lot of already like some time ago, uh, Gmail has had like a really good predictive uh, like a text input in it. I'm a strong believer of that. This kind of like an AI assistants pop up like an here and there, kind of like an people who remember the Microsoft Clippy in the Word and whatnot. That was a bit annoyed and annoying and ahead of his time. I even built one startup that was basically a virtual sales assistant, and being worked in having worked a lot in the NLP space and following the industry like and over the past like in half a decade of the NLP space and seeing the explosion of the large language models and such, we are making such a great progress, and having this like an AI assistance for everyone in every place. That's what I see that will happen. But the funny thing, no matter what, even in 2070 or something, someone will download a CSV, edit it by hand, and then upload it to make, for example, revenue reporting to work.
Well, that's true. I guess it's up to, each person whether they do want to use an AI personal assistant or not. So yeah, you can't really control that.
Yeah, that's true.
So what are some great data practices in your opinion, for ML-based products, such as, not downloading CSVs by hand?
I think like there has been a huge like a gap or like a cultural gap between data people, ML people, and software engineers, and we're still like playing catch up with great software engineering teams. I feel like, and they developers got like an automated testing, continuous integration, learned how to ship in small increments, do a quick prototyping and such. And well, not everything of those practices can be copied over as they is, because developing a machine learning model, testing it, ensuring the quality of it, and deploying it requires a little bit different type of things than pure stateless applications. And such with data, because It's not so easy to revert if you make a big data mistake and you have to or you lose some data, for example, that is not recoverable. But and I think there is a great movement there. People talking about data ops, ML ops, which makes me happy because I've worked in the software industry close to DevOps people, so that makes me really happy. And if we took like a couple of really practical tips, make sure that you back up your uh, data, even though if it's you're working with like an pandas locally, just dump the data somewhere and check that your those checkpoints and data can be restored.
Mhm.
I've couple of times lost like a day's worth or even weeks worth of work by accidentally deleting data that should have been backed up. Um, Become your own chaos engineer. Like
Yeah.
everything that can go wrong will eventually go wrong, and just embrace it, and be prepared for it. Uh, Code in a defensive way, and actually, it's sometimes really fun to just poke around and see how things break. See whatever you're building, is it a data pipelines, ML model, or and see what actually happens when you uh, throw some random stuff, which is a good reminder that the real life data will always surprise you. Which is an important to, as soon as possible, go out and test with real data, try out how your system works with real world data, real world users, and because that's the fastest way of learning of did your model, for example, perform. So the fast iteration cycle that software engineers have had a long time, and 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 related to the data and losing data and making mistakes. We all make mistakes. If you are building a production systems, if it's an data cleaning or an ML enrichment or something like that, if you have the possibility of having an easily to replay data,
Mhm.
that is the best system that you can have, because having a mistake and bug in the code and then just fixing it and being able to replay the data to fix the setup, running it through for example, in the previous company we had a language detection system that detected language, and if it had and when we were developing it and it had some fault, being able to just rerun the data through the system again easily, and saved us so many times of and those are a couple of good practices I've found.
Got it. So sort of like borrow, ideas from, let's say, software engineering principles or just long-term systems that have worked so far, but adapted to data, such as something as simple as enabling, data versioning in S3 buckets. Or
Yeah.
even though, increments don't work for ML models, because if you change data, like everything changes, you have to redo everything. However, you can make
Mm.
increments on aspects of the ML model or aspects of the data itself. And finally, just data observability and quality, ensuring that with unit tests and things like that, right?
Yeah. Yes, that
Cool.
kind of stuff, and it
That's great
and
advice.
having those systems in, if you have the possibility of working in those environments, it just makes you so happy. I'm usually the one who has been enabling
Mhm.
those environments, which makes me also happy to make
Yeah,
other people have a happy environment.
got it. Yeah, I think it's big time we sort of follow standard procedures like these, because data practices are, all over the place and different at different places. And I think, democratization of it sort of helps us in breaking silos and sort of establishing these common
100%.
practices. Yeah, that's true. So finally,
100%.
what advice would you give someone who's just starting out in this field?
I think the most important thing is to have a general curiosity, and just go and out there read, talk to people, and kind of like try to absorb as much of information as possible, like and try to find people blogs from people who you like reading and like and subscribing to those, having a good newsletters, like and following what's happening in the industry. Most of the stuff that I've learned, I've either read from a book or mostly from someone writing in a good blog post about it. If you like videos, YouTube is full of those as well.
Yeah, like this podcast.
Yeah, like this podcast. But it's important to be curious about broader things, not just like on your industry and what you're focusing on. What is your discipline? Because like creativity is the key in I think in data and the world, and a lot of different industries or disciplines have similar patterns, and like and being able to recognize that, hey, these people actually were able to solve this that looks a bit similar than what I did. I'm trying to achieve, and then like trying different out, because innovation happens in intersections, or like and when people from different background get together and like and cultivating that. I, for example, used algorithms that were developed for DNA sequencing to analyze user journeys
Oh,
and click paths, which is quite funny that you wouldn't think that those two have anything together, but DNA is a sequence.
yeah.
User
And
journey is a sequence,
yeah.
and you have a lot of those. So it was just like a random idea, and it actually worked. And then being like a creative, and you can be clever and creative, just try things out, you usually can solve most of the things, like, quite simple things, and like and break the parameters. Like your model doesn't have to be perfect. You can just try something out, see what happens, and then I can learn from that. From technical perspective, absolutely you need to know how to write SQL, even though I believe that SQL will end up being more of a interface today, the one that we should but use tools to generate SQL, such like a pre-tool nowadays. But it's still like an important skill to have. And well, all the data ecosystem can be run with Python, so that's a must. Even though I would love to work more with Julia, I've used Julia Lang on like on side projects, hobby things, ever since it came out 10 years ago. But if the industry uses Python, it's so much easier to use tools that everyone else uses.
Yeah, I think it is a matter of support from the community in general. Like using a very niche tool, just there has to be a stop because beyond a point, you don't have a community to take you further. So I think that's sort of why Python is a must these days because of the community support.
100%, 100%. Like community is good. Like being active on the community, like and discussing with people, listening what they talk, what would be what are the best things, what are the hype things, but also important to be careful about hype things. If you have an really hyped technology, there must be something behind. So it's important to be behind the hype and not just like a copy everything that the big companies do without like an understanding like why they do it that way and why they choose to do it.
Got it. Yeah. That's great advice, Niko. Thank you so much for this podcast. Thank you for your time. And thanks to the
Thank you
listeners.
for inviting me here.
Of course, my pleasure.